Hey guys, as some of you have probably noticed, I've been posting a lot on social media about spiritual thought of the day, and I've been doing that just to kind of keep the spirit with me and spread it, and hopefully make a difference for someone who's maybe having a hard day. But as I've been doing that, and as I've been um, more amped to show my faith and to share it, I've also ran into a lot of controversy as to how someone like me could have such an amazing testimony, or have a testimony, period. This actually came up when I saw someone from high school, and in high school, I had been about this close from being a protester at Mormon events against the Mormon church because I don't really know why. Actually, I just hated it. And this person just wondered how I had a testimony and kind of inferred that they didn't think I deserved to have one, which was really hard, but that's what this video is going to be. I'm going to forewarn you that's probably going to be a little bit long, but this is my story, and I hope that this helps you understand me better and can maybe help others. And if you have any questions, I am more than happy to answer them. I guess I'll just start. So, in high school, I had a lot of things go wrong for me and my family, and it was very personally breaking down. I mean, my first year of high school, my freshman year, I took an institute class with an amazing teacher, and I kind of feel bad for the poor guy because I just did not want to be there. I was taking it just to please people, and I mean, it was a good class. I learned a lot, but my heart wasn't in it, I guess. And my second year, I didn't take institute or seminary, and I just didn't take it the rest of high school. And by the time my senior year rolled around, I was pretty much anti-Mormon. Not that I would throw hate at people who were religious, but I just always felt like I was being judged because I wasn't, and I just kind of had a different family situation. I felt like I was being judged in that way, and I just really felt like I didn't belong at church because of my own feelings and things that I thought were true. And I started to go through a really hard time where I really struggled with feeling safe in general, and I really had a lot of anxiety, and I would start almost every morning with a panic attack, which was awful because I was needed, and I had to just keep going through the daily actions while I was like literally suffocating inside. And before I start this part of my story, I'm sure that I'll have some family and friends that'll be watching this. And as I say this, I just want you to know that I tried extremely hard to hide this part of my life because it was really hard for me, and I didn't want anyone to worry about me or hurt because I was hurting. And I kept all of these feelings to myself for a reason. The only reason I share them now is in the hopes that people understand how real God is to me and why I will never break the covenants I've made with Him, and why I have a testimony. And maybe it'll sprout someone else's testimony. I don't know. But I just don't want anyone to blame themselves or feel like they need to apologize. And I would really appreciate it if this part of the story, there weren't any questions as to what was going on, because it's very personal within my family, and all of it's resolved at this point, and I'm happier than I've ever been in my life. So I'm okay, I promise. And all of the problems that were going on at that time have been resolved. So I just would really rather not share that. But that being said, I came home one night and I was alone. My brothers weren't there, my mom wasn't there. I was alone in my apartment at the time that I shared with my family, and the doors were locked, the windows were locked. I was completely alone, and I'm not sure why or what the tipping point was. I honestly don't remember, but I got pushed over the edge, and I just started screaming and yelling at the top of my lungs at God, because at this point, I wasn't sure if God existed, and I kind of figured if he did, he didn't care about me, because I was struggling so hard. And what I had failed to realize was that the things I was struggling with and the things that I was feeling were because of the actions of people around me and them using their agency in a way that affected me negatively. And so I was in my room, I was yelling, I was screaming so loud that I lost my voice, and I was just crying hysterically, and I couldn't breathe, and I just slid down my door finally because I had to stop or I wasn't going to be able to breathe. I felt like I was going to throw up, and I just slid against the door, and I just was sobbing. And in that moment, I seriously thought that it would be easier just to end it right there. And I sat there for a good 20 minutes just thinking of ways of how I could end it. And I was seriously thinking about it because I was so numb. I was past rock bottom. I was drowning, and I just couldn't keep my head above the water anymore. And there's a little part of me, so small, that just started screaming, "What are you doing? Why are you even thinking about this?" And this part of me kind of took over for a second. And it was like the last few drops of strength that I had left, I just shook them out and I said a prayer. And it wasn't this big, explosive prayer, and I didn't know if it was going to work. I just knew that it was my last chance. And I just looked up and I said, "God, if you're really there and you care about me at all, I need some help, because if you want me to keep going, I can't do this alone." And that's really all I said, was I can't do it alone, I need some help. And I closed my eyes and my head fell. And that was it. I just closed my eyes. And again, I was alone completely in that entire house. And I just want to remind you how dark of a place I was in. I was thinking about taking my life. And felt numb. And I felt hopeless, and I have never felt more alone than I did in that moment. And I just felt someone hug me. And at first it was really weird because I knew that I was alone in that house. And as this person hugged me, I just felt overwhelming love. And I just heard a voice say, "I've got you." And I felt safe for the first time in a very, very long time. I felt like I was going to be okay, and I felt like I wasn't alone, and I didn't feel anxious, and I didn't feel worried, and I was just loved and okay. And I didn't want to move because I was so scared that if I moved, I would lose this beautiful sense of comfort that I was experiencing. And so I fell asleep, and I woke up in my bed, and I don't know if I crawled in there in the middle of the night. I don't know what happened, but I woke up in bed, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't have a panic attack. And that was the start for me, I think. Really kind of the thing that snapped me back into place was the person who I'm fairly sure I know was my savior was hugging me, and he just said, "I've got you." And I knew that he had me, and I wasn't going to be ever alone. from that point forward, and I didn't ever have to feel that way again because there was always someone that I could turn to feel that safety and that love and that warmth. And it was an incredible experience that I really wish that I could convey, but I know I'm not doing a very good job. But I just want to make it very clear that I went from feeling completely hopeless and worthless and unloved to feeling overwhelming hope and strength, and I physically felt arms around me. And I just want to make that very, very clear, because that's a big part of it. I actually have a favorite picture of Christ, and I'm sorry because you'll probably not be able to see it very well. But it's a picture of him, and he's pulling one of the apostles out of the water after they've walked to him and they lose sight of him and lose faith and fall into the water during the storm. And that's where I was. I was a little girl walking towards Christ because everyone around me was walking towards Christ. It seemed like the right thing to do, and I stopped looking at him. And I started seeing all these things around me. I started seeing the lightning. I started seeing the ships falling apart. I started seeing dangerous sharks and fish around me. And I looked down and saw how deep it was, and I lost faith. And I started to fall, and I honestly never thought my head would break the surface again. But when he hugged me, when I felt that, that was him pulling me out of the water. And from that point on, I had a very close relationship with God. I prayed to him about everything. While I was driving, while I was alone at night, sitting on my roof, I prayed to him about everything at school, in my head, in my heart, all the time. And that was the start. And then I was sitting on my bed, and I was doing much better than I was in that moment, in a new house with my family. And I saw this, pile of all my stuff, getting ready to move to my college dorm, which I had picked because of a voice in the back of my head telling me to pick that apartment. And I just, before I left to leave that house, I just said, God, please help me to be truly happy, because I hadn't been truly happy in a very long time, and I didn't know what that meant, but I knew if I asked for it, then he would give it to me, and that he would help me find a way to receive that. And so I got all my stuff packed up, and I moved into my college dorm apartment, and turns out all my roommates were LDS, and I was mortified because I hated organized religion. I thought it was stupid, and none of it was true. And all of it was this big ploy to get you to conform and brainwash you. And just basically things that everyone who's fallen away from the church feels. That's where I was. But much to my surprise, my roommates, when the topic of religion came up, just said, hey, if you ever want to come, you're welcome. If not, that's cool too. We're here for you if you need us. And it felt really good for once not to have someone pulling me to go to church or to not go to church, and just pulling me in these two different directions so tight that I felt like I was going to snap. And it really gave me the opportunity to make a choice. And there were these wonderful guys across the hall I'm still friends with. One of them is like my big brother, and I love him so much, because he really helped me see some things that I needed to see. But I became really close with those guys across the hall, and we were really good friends, and we saw each other every day and hung out all the time. And I began to notice the difference of myself. I wasn't wearing clothing that was as immodest. I wasn't swearing. I I just was becoming more like my roommates, and I started to feel a lot less lost and a little more happy. And I just would hang out with my friends and these wonderful guys across the hall, and then I would go hang out with old friends. And while I still loved my old friends and I had a wonderful time with them, there was just this absence of I guess, of light, of the spirit. Um, what I know now is the spirit. And at the time, it just felt good. It felt good. It felt clean. It felt pure. And it felt like that hug that I had received. And one day I came home to my apartment after hanging out with some people who had been drinking, and I just knew immediately I want to go to church tomorrow. And I walked in, and I was just kind of thinking about it and mulling it over in my head, and no one was at my apartment. I was like, oh, well, that's weird. They're probably across the hall. And I went across the hall, and I when they're all sitting there playing, I think it was Uno, I don't know, some card game. And one of the guys, the one that I'm actually really close with now, just stood up and said, hey, I missed you today, and just gave me this big old hug. And I bet you if I brought it up to him, he'd be like, what? I don't remember that. But because of that, I said, okay, I'm going to come to church tomorrow. And they all just kind of looked at me like, what? I mean, like, okay. But I had been so against it at this point that they just were shocked. And I was shocked as well because, like, I was so against it. And we sat there and talked, and later we kind of migrated over to my apartment. And they were talking about priesthood blessings, and I had a priesthood blessing right after I was born, and like my baby blessing and things like that. But from when I can remember, I hadn't had a priesthood blessing, and it just was so interesting to me, this concept that this guy could put oil on my head and tell me things I needed to hear that were from God, like, okay, yeah, right. And they talked about it, and I just kind of thought, oh, well, maybe I want one, let's just see what this is really about. And there's a little bit of snootiness to it, like, yeah, maybe, but then for the most part, it was real curiosity, and my heart just was drawn to it a little bit. And I was able to have a blessing. I ended up walking with a roommate and saying, I don't know if I am worthy to have a blessing. Like, I don't know if I do. Like, I'm not really an active member. Like, I haven't been keeping up with the things that I need to be. Like, I haven't read my scriptures. Like, all these things. And she said, no, anyone can have one. It doesn't matter. And we were walking outside, and as we turned around, went to go turn around the corner, she kind of just stopped me. Was like, hey, are you going to ask for one? And I said, well, if the guys across the hall, if their lights are on, then I'll go knock on their door. Like, it won't hurt anything. Well, this is how I know God has a sense of humor, because I turned the corner, and I kid you not, every single light in that apartment was blazing. And I'm talking, you could see their blinds were all open, all of their bedroom lights were on, you could see the bathroom lights on through their bedroom because their doors were all open, the living room light was on, the kitchen light was on, the lamp was on, everything in that apartment was on. And so I didn't really have a choice. I couldn't be like, oh, I don't want to wake anyone up. I was kind of like, okay, well, this is going to be awkward. And so we went up these stairs, knocked on the door, and there was one of these guys that was a music major, and I actually am really good friends with him and his now wife, but I didn't know him super well because he wasn't around a lot, just because he was a music major, and music majors have no lives outside of school. They just have so much time, and if you talk to one, they'll attest to that. But I didn't know him very well, and he answered the door, and my roommate said, hey, Berkeley wants a blessing. Do you think you could give her one? And he said, yeah, sure, come in. And he went out and got a chair and asked me to sit in it. And he said, do you want one for healing or for comfort? And I had no idea what either of those things meant. And I kind of just looked at my roommate like, help. And she's like, probably a little bit of both. And so one of these guys who were thankfully worthy priesthood holders, the first one placed his hands on my head with oil. and he gave me a blessing of healing. And looking back, it was probably more of a mental, um, spiritual healing than it was physical. And it felt really weird at first. Because it was like, I don't know this one guy, like this other guy's my friend, but this is weird that you're just like touching my head with oil and I have to wash my hair, and like just all these things. And then I started to listen to the words that the second guy was saying. This personal blessing of comfort. And in this blessing, the first thing that he said was, you don't understand why you're here. And you don't understand why you've asked for this blessing. And I didn't. And I was confused in the moment, and he said that right as it popped into my head. And he said, but you will understand. And he said, Heavenly Father loves you more than you will ever know or understand. And he said that he was proud of me for the things I had overcome. And that he was proud that I had come and asked for a priesthood blessing. Because small things begin little things. And he said a few other things that I had prayed about, never ever aloud, but in my heart. And he gave me the answers that I had prayed about. I'd never talked about with anyone. I had never said anything to anyone. And he never written it down, and he was telling me these things. And I was just mind blown. And as these questions would pop into my head, he would just answer them, and just things that I was worried about for the school year. And he blessed me to be able to sleep, which I hadn't been doing. And he blessed me to not be sick, and to be healthy through the school year, which I was. And that's not normal for me. For those of you who know me, I have asthma. I get sick like every other week in the winter. And that whole year, I didn't get super sick once. And I just was bawling by the end of this beautiful priesthood blessing. And I went back and I sat down and I prayed and I said, okay, God, priesthood's real. That guy was talking, you were using him to talk to me. But here's the thing, if you want me to be at church, I need to know it's okay that I come from a broken family. I need to know that it's okay I haven't always gone to church and that I've fallen away and lost faith and made mistakes. And I need to know that I'm not going to lose myself by coming to church, because that was a real scary thing for me. I was legitimately terrified that I would lose my personality, that I would lose my opinions by going to church. And I went to church the next day, and the bishopric was talking, and the first guy got up and he said, I haven't always been a member of the church, and talked about how he had been inactive and how he had come back to church and how wonderful it was for him and how glad he was. And the second guy got up and he talked about how he wasn't raised Mormon and how his parents had done the best they could. And but he'd come from kind of a broken home. And then the third guy got up and he talked about how our individual personalities and our individual opinions and our individual attributes are gifts from God and how they enhance the church. And I think that I looked over after a minute, and like all of the guys that was sitting by in my roommates were like stifling laughs, because I like legitimately was like leaning forward, like staring with my eyes wide and my jaw to the ground, because all of these were being answered. And it became very apparent I was supposed to be there. Well, I went up after and I met the bishop, and he would become one of the most important people in my life, because this bishop was just the perfect person to help me, and honestly was an answer to her prayer along with his two counselors. And all of them will always hold a very special spot in my heart and in my testimony, because they welcomed me with open arms, and I felt nothing but love and encouragement I didn't feel scorned. I didn't feel, they didn't guilt trip me for not coming to church. Up to that point, I just felt so loved and so welcomed by these awesome guys, these awesome men. And I remember the first time I met with the bishop, and I just said, I really want to go to the temple, and I said I really want my patriarchal blessing, and he said, let's do it. And we got my limit use temple recommend signed, and we got my patriarchal blessing recommend, and sent me on my way. And I went to the temple that time with the guy who would give me the blessing and his girlfriend, who's now his wife, and I did baptisms for the first time in forever, and I felt so calm in the temple, and it was just beautiful. And I went to church every Sunday, and the bishop came to know me very well because I'm just chatterbox and I'm real social, and I had a calling, and I did my best with that, and I just became a part of a beautiful community surrounded by friends. And then second year rolled around, and it was the summer after my first year of college, right before my second year was going to start, and I just was reading about temple covenants, and I was reading about garments, the sacred clothing, and I was learning more about that as much as you can, but it's so sacred that there's not a whole lot out there, specifics. And I just started praying and thinking, well, maybe I need to get that. I need to go through the temple. Maybe that's what I need. And started to read through my patriarchal blessing, and I realized that it kind of separated going through the temple and marriage and all those things, and usually they're kind of together, and it was very separated in mine, and I hadn't noticed it before, and I just thought, wow, maybe I'm supposed to go through now. And I spent the entire summer fasting and praying and just every day, and I remember right before school was going to start, I was pretty much packed up and moved. I woke up really early, and I had fasted, and I went to the temple grounds, and I went and sat and watched the sunrise by the hedge of the Manti Temple. There's like a hedge, and I just sat there, and I watched the sunrise, and I just prayed, and I read my patriarchal blessing, and I just said, God, like, is this what I'm supposed to do? Is this your plan for me to go through the temple now? And October popped into my head, and I was like, October? Just October, and I just thought, okay, yes, that's my answer, and it's going to be in October. And so as soon as I started going to my other word again with the same bishop I had before, the year before, and I talked to him, and I went up to him the first week of church, and I said, Bishop, I want to go through the temple. And he said, Berkeley, that's great. Go read Pearl of Great Price. And I read through Pearl of Great Price, and I read through it in like 2 weeks because I really wanted to go through, and I was ready to make that commitment. And I read it, and I said, Bishop, I read it. And he's like, have you read the Temple Prep Manual? And I was like, yeah, Bishop, I've read the Temple Prep Manual. And he said, let's make an appointment. And so made an appointment, and then I had to reschedule it, and it was really hard to get an actual appointment in. And just because at the start of the year, so much is going on, and you're trying to get all these things done, and I wasn't 100% sure, but I was 98% sure this is what I needed to do. And I was talking to my roommates about it, and the people I loved about it, and my friends, and just really pushing myself to understand. And finally, I met with my bishop, and I sat there in his office, in the same office I had gotten my first limit use recommended forever, about a year ago. And I said, I'm ready, let's do this. And he said, I feel like you're ready too, Burke, let's do it. And he helped me, asked me all the questions, and signed my recommend. And he said, okay, head down to the stake president's office and see if there's anyone there. And I headed down that way, and there was. And I wish I had it, but the president that interviewed me gave me a $2 bill. And he said, Berkeley, this is to remind you that you are more than just one piece. That you have your body and you have your soul, and you have to feed your soul just as you do your body. And that was very profound to me because I hadn't thought of it like that before. He talked to me for a minute, and we read through some scriptures. And in October, I got my temple recommend signed to go through the temple, and I decided I was going to go through the Manti temple. Lots of people didn't know it's a live session, you're going to be so lost and so confused, but when I talked it over with my bishop, who knew me so very, very well, because I had just confided in him with a lot, and he had really helped me come back to church, he just knew me very well, and he said, Berkeley, I really think that a live session will actually be better for you, and I agreed with him, and I got my temple recommend signed, and I hadn't told any of my family, because I was a little bit scared of what they would say, and I was really nervous about it, and I just really, really wanted to make sure that I was doing this for me, and not for anyone else. And so I had my temple recommend signed, and I had already gotten it, and I told my mom, and I told my grandparents and my family, hey, I'm going through the temple. I actually told them after I asked someone to be my escort, and the first person I asked to be my escort actually ended up not being able to be. And so I got my temple recommend signed in October, and I didn't get to go through the temple until February. And it was so hard, and I just kept feeling like, okay, like, God, I thought this is what you want me to do, like, I've been working so hard, I've prayed, and I just really thought to see if this is really, the path that you wish for me to take, and it was just taking forever. And I had one aunt that I just was really, really close with, and I mean, I love all my family, of course, and I was close with all of them, but the one aunt on my dad's side, I just was really close with, and we're a little bit more like sisters than we are aunt and niece. And I felt like I could just tell her anything and talk to her about anything. And one day I was just ranting on the phone, and I was like, I just feel like this is taking forever, and it is so hard for me, and I'm just so stressed about it, and it's just hard. I just want to go through. Like, why doesn't God want me to do this? And Satan was attacking me hardcore, like, I was 100% worthy to go to the temple. And like, you aren't worthy. You shouldn't be going to the temple. And of course I was, and I should have. And it was just getting really hard and wearing on me really fast. I just felt like frustrated, like, what? Like, God, come on. And the reason I hadn't asked this aunt was because of just a different situation, and I didn't want to burden them with having to drive so far and pay for gas and hotel room. They didn't have a super reliable car at the time. And I was just like, no, I don't want to burden them with that. And this particular day, I was talking to this aunt, and she said, hey, we have a new car, like, got a really good new job, and just all these things. And I was like, awesome. And she just kind of said, I'll be your escort if you want me to. And I'm pretty sure I broke down crying. Because I was like, when can you come down? And we picked a date, and I called, said, okay, let me call the temple, and I called, and I made a reservation. And I remember I went to church, and I had a calling as the family home evening director at the time, and I went into our, ward council meeting that next morning, and my bishop was getting probably about as frustrated as I was, because I had this recommend and I wasn't going through. And I just walked right in and I was like, Bishop, I set a date! And I was able to go through the temple on February 18th. So, October, November, December, January, February. So, 5 months. October, November, December, January, February. That I had my temple run then. And I was so nervous. And I didn't know what to expect, and I was scared, and I remember getting all my temple stuff ready, and being like, God, help me, like, help me not to be nervous, and I went in, and I was just a nervous wreck. But as soon as I walked in the temple, I just felt so peaceful, and I remember sitting, getting ready for everything to start, and looking around, and, the bishop walked in, and my bishop was there, and I had my grandma, and a cousin there, and I had my uncle there, and I had one friend who actually I didn't think would actually show up, and he like walked in at the very last second, and I remember being so grateful because I couldn't see my bishop and I couldn't see my uncle, and my aunt or not my aunt, my grandma and my cousin were behind me, so all I could see was my aunt, but if I turned my head I could see this friend, and so I was really grateful in the end that he had come because when I got nervous, I was able to look and see that there was someone else there for me. But I went through and received my endowments and had that gift. Was able to receive them, and about I think 2 weeks later, that bishop actually got released, and I can remember talking to his wife after at one of the very last. It was like a goodbye party. It was really hard for me to say goodbye to this bishopric because they had brought me back to church, and they had given me this amazing gift and just shown me all these incredible things. And remember her being like, I think that's one of the reasons, because he had been held his bishopric title, his title as bishop, for longer than most singles ward bishops. And she just said, I think that's one of the reasons, like, he was supposed to help you go through the temple, and that ended up being true. I mean, I'm sure he was. I don't know if I would have had such an open heart for any other bishopric. They just all had such amazing personalities that really helped me to understand the gospel. And I can remember sitting inside that temple and looking around and remembering that day I sat on my bed and prayed, God help me be truly happy, and I just wondered, had I not prayed, would I have found my way back to church? And I think the answer is no, because I had prayed and said, God help me, and I was ready to receive his love, and that's why I'm here. That's why I went to the temple, guys. That's why I share these spiritual posts every day. It's things that I truly believe. They're not these weird, random things. I believe it wholeheartedly. And I know this is a really long video, and if you made it to this point, I'm thumbs up to you. Like, thanks for being a true trooper and a true friend. I'm glad, and I hope that you really made it to the end of this video, because this is where I tell you how much God loves you. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you've committed these terrible sins. I don't care if you have done bad things in your life. God loves you, and all you have to do is ask, and he'll be there this fast. And I promise you that you are not ever alone, because we have a big brother, and this big brother loved us all so much that he came here and he established this church, and he chose, because he could have stopped the atonement at any time, to sit in a garden and feel my sins and my heart and my pain and my frustrations and your pain and your heart and your frustrations and the next person's and the next person's and the next person's, every single one of us, we felt our individual frustrations and our individual pains and our individual emotions so that we would never ever have to be alone. He suffered so much that he was bleeding from every pore. And then he sat and listened as people lied and accused him of things that were not true. And then he was scourged. And they ripped pieces of skin off of his back with this whip. And he just bore it. And then he carried his own cross. And was mocked. And beaten by people who, not too long before, were proclaiming his name and rejoicing in it. And they nailed him to the cross. And he died for us. He was the Son of God. He could have stopped it. He could have said, I'm done. But he did it because he loves you. Because he loves me. And I never will doubt that ever again. And I know that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is true. I know it with everything I am because that priesthood blessing was exactly what I needed, and there was no way he could have known any of the things that he said that I needed to hear. And I know that God listens and he answers our prayers when we ask in faith. And I know that the LDS Church teaches truth, and the feeling I have when I'm around the people of the church is just so impeccable, and I'm so grateful for it. And I know it's true because of all the things I just told you. Because I went from being a almost protester to being an endowed member of the church. And that's a jump. That's like, this is, the North Pole and this is the South Pole, and I started on the North Pole and here I am at the South Pole now. And I know it's true. I wasn't bamboozled, I wasn't tricked. I read the scriptures, and in it I find my answers to my prayers that I've been asking. And I will never doubt that. And I will always choose my faith over everything else. Because I know that if I do that, everything that matters will follow and fall into place. And I promise you that God is there. He exists. I know I have some friends that are atheists, and you probably unfollowed me by this point. But he's there. I promise. He is watching you. He loves you. There's no such thing as coincidences. It just all had lined up so perfectly. There's no way I would be here if there weren't a God. It lined up perfectly to where someone saved me that night. My Savior saved me for about the bazillionth time, and he would save me about a bazillion more times. And I picked an apartment full of the exact right people to guide me back to church across the hall from these worthy, beautiful priesthood holders that were able to give me a blessing that changed me to a ward with 3 of the most incredible men I have ever met in my life that had the perfect personalities and the perfect hearts to welcome me and bring me back to church. And you're going to tell me that you don't believe in a God? or that I don't have a right to have a testimony. I do. And I have a testimony, and it's beautiful, and it's that God loves everyone, and that all you have to do in order to receive His grace, in order to receive His love, in order to receive His help, is to ask. He's literally sitting there, waiting for you to say help. Because the moment you do, He's going to pull you out of the water. He's not going to let you drown. He loves you. Imagine having your own child, having to learn these terrible, hard lessons and not being able to help them until they ask. And they just keep making these terrible decisions and doing these horrible things that you know aren't going to be right for them. Finally, they say, help. How happy are you? And that's how our Father in heaven feels. He's happy you were able to ask His help. And I'm not saying that bad things aren't going to happen, because they are, because people still have their individual agency. What I am saying is that as long as I am on this earth, there will at least be a little light, because I will always have my testimony. And I'm saying that my candle burns bright, and I hope that by watching this video, your candle might burn a little bit brighter too. And I just hope that this helps you understand me a little bit better as a person, and my belief a little bit better, so that you can know and understand why I post those spiritual thoughts of the day, why I am constantly blasting church music as I drive around campus, why I take midnight drives to the temple just to sit outside of it in my car. It's because I feel peace in those things, and I feel God in those things, and I trust Him with everything I am. If He were to ask me to do anything, I would do it, because I know that He is guiding me in the direction. I know that He has this incredible plan that He has prepared just for me, and He knows me, and I wouldn't trust anyone else more to put me on the right path and to guide me and to choose, the man that I'll one day marry, whoever that may be, and to help me, guide me to be a mother someday, and things like that. I just know He has a plan, and I know that He loves me, and He knows my name. He knows my name. He knows me as His daughter, Berkeley Ross, and my Savior knows me as His little sister, Berkeley Ross, and they are both fighting for me every day. And they are both there for me every day. And there have been 1,000,001 different moments like that hug where I know that they are there. And I know they are there with you now. And they love you. And they're just waiting for you to reach up. And I love you all. And I hope that if you need anything ever, that you will come to me. And I'm so grateful for those of you that are still hanging around for this video. And I say these things in the name of my Savior and Redeemer, Jesus Christ, and my Heavenly Father. Amen.